I knew something was wrong the moment she said, "Thank you," instead of my name. It wasn't even a big gesture. That's what keeps replaying in my head. I didn't plan anything dramatic or desperate. No flowers, no speech, no attempt to fix whatever had been quietly breaking between us. Just her favorite snack from that small bakery 2 streets away from her office. The one she used to drag me to on Sundays, insisting their cinnamon rolls were life-changing, even though I always thought they were just fine. I remember standing outside her building, feeling oddly nervous, like I was about to go on a first date instead of seeing someone I'd been with for almost 3 years. People were leaving work in small groups, laughing, complaining, lighting cigarettes. I checked my phone twice even though I hadn't gotten any messages. She had said she'd be done around 6. It was already 6:20. When she finally walked out, she didn't see me at first. I noticed how different she looked, and not in any obvious way. Same coat, same bag, same way of brushing her hair behind her ear. But there was this distance, like she was somewhere else entirely, even while standing right there on the sidewalk. I called her name. She turned, and for a split second, I saw something flicker across her face. Not joy, not even surprise, just a brief calculation, like she was trying to place me in her day. Then she smiled. Polite, measured, the kind of smile you give a coworker you don't mind. "You didn't have to come," she said. That was the first thing. Not "I missed you." Not "What are you doing here?" Just that. I handed her the paper bag anyway, trying to ignore the way my chest tightened. "I was nearby," I lied. "Thought you might be hungry." She took it, peeked inside, and gave a small nod. "Oh, thanks." Another pause. "I love these." But she didn't sound like she did. There was no spark, no teasing comment about how I'd probably eaten half of it on the way. No reaching for my hand. No leaning into me like she used to when she was tired after work. She just held the bag between us like it was an object we both had to acknowledge before moving on. We stood there in silence for a few seconds too long. "Do you want to walk?" I asked. She hesitated. It was subtle, but I saw it. The slight shift in her weight. The way her eyes flicked toward the street, like she was checking for an exit. I have a call later," she said. "And I'm kind of exhausted." "Right," I said quickly. "Of course." I nodded like I understood, like this was normal, like we hadn't once spent entire evenings together doing absolutely nothing just because we wanted to be around each other. "I just wanted to see you for a bit," I added, softer this time. She smiled again, that same careful smile. "You did." And that was it. No kiss. Not even the quick, absent-minded kind we used to exchange without thinking. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder, gave a small wave, and turned to leave. I watched her walk away, the paper bag still in her hand, swinging slightly with each step. She didn't look back. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the spot where she disappeared into the crowd, trying to figure out when exactly things had shifted from us being us to whatever that interaction had just been. It hadn't happened overnight. That's the part that messes with you the most. There was no single argument, no dramatic betrayal that I could point to and say, "That's when it all broke." It was quieter than that. Slower. Like a leak you don't notice until the damage is already done. On the walk home, I kept replaying small moments from the past few months. Her taking longer to reply to messages. Canceling plans with vague excuses that didn't quite add up but weren't suspicious enough to confront. The way conversations started feeling functional. Like we were just exchanging information instead of actually talking. And me? I kept telling myself it was temporary. Stress from work. Life getting busy. That relationships go through phases. I thought if I just stayed consistent, stayed patient, things would settle back into place. Standing there earlier, holding that stupid paper bag, I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit before. I wasn't late to fixing anything. I was late to noticing it was already over. And somehow, that felt worse. The worst part is that I didn't confront her that night. I wish I could say I went home and forced a real conversation. That I called her, or showed up, or did anything that made it impossible for us to keep pretending things were normal. But I didn't. I did what I'd been doing for a while without noticing. I adjusted. I told myself she was just tired. Work had been heavy. People shut down when they're overwhelmed. That happens. It didn't have to mean anything about us. That's what I kept repeating as I walked into my apartment. It felt unusually quiet. Not peaceful, just empty. I put my keys down, stood there for a second, then picked up my phone. I didn't want to overthink it, but I also didn't want to disappear. So I sent something simple. "Hope you got home safe." I stared at the message after sending it. It sat there. Delivered. No typing. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Yeah, just got in. Thanks again for the snack. I read it twice. There was nothing technically wrong with it. It was polite. Normal. That was the problem. It felt like something you'd send to someone you weren't close to. I waited a bit, hoping she'd send something else. A second message. Something softer. Nothing came. I typed, erased, typed again. Want to talk later? I hesitated before sending it, then did it anyway. This time the reply took longer. I might fall asleep early. Long day. That was it. No, maybe tomorrow. No effort to keep the conversation going. I put my phone down and sat there, trying to convince myself I was making something out of nothing. I didn't text again. She didn't either. Over the next few weeks, the distance became clearer. At first, it had been easy to ignore. Small things. Delayed replies. Canceled plans. But then it started forming a pattern, and patterns are harder to dismiss. We stopped seeing each other as often. From almost every day to a couple of times a week. Then once a week. Sometimes less. Every reason made sense on its own. Work's been busy. I promised I'd help a friend. I just need some time to rest. None of it sounded like a lie, but all of it together didn't feel right. When we did meet, something was off. We'd sit next to each other like before, same places, same routine. A show playing in the background. I tried to talk about things we used to care about. She would answer, but it felt delayed, like she wasn't fully there. Sometimes she checked her phone. Not constantly, just enough for me to notice. Everything okay? I asked once. Yeah, she said quickly. Just work. I nodded. I didn't push. One night, we were lying in bed, and for a moment, everything felt almost normal. Her head was on my chest. Her hand moved slowly across my arm. It was familiar, comfortable. Do you ever feel like things have changed? I asked. She paused, just briefly. Then her hand stopped moving. Changed how, she said. I hesitated. Just us. There was a silence. People change, she said finally. It wasn't really an answer. You know what I mean, I said. She sighed quietly. I think you're overthinking it. That word again. Overthinking. It makes you feel like the problem is you. I'm not trying to start anything, I said. I know, she replied. I just don't think there's anything wrong. I looked at her and felt something shift inside me. Not break. Just loosen. Okay, I said. We didn't talk about it again. A few days later, I ran into someone from her work. It was random. I was grabbing coffee when a guy next to me mentioned her company. I turned without thinking. You work there? I asked. Yeah, he said. I hesitated, then said her name. There was a pause. Small, but noticeable. Oh, he said. Yeah, I know her. Something about the way he said it made me uneasy. How is she? He asked. Good, I said. He gave a slight smile. Yeah, she's good. We didn't talk much after that. But when I left, something didn't sit right. I couldn't explain it clearly. Just a feeling, like I had missed something important. And for the first time, a thought stayed in my head longer than I wanted. Maybe this wasn't just distance. Maybe something else was already there. I didn't act on that thought right away. That's the thing about thoughts you're not ready for. They don't arrive clearly. They stay somewhere in the background, quiet but persistent, like a sound you can ignore until everything else goes silent. So I told myself I was imagining it. One awkward pause from a stranger didn't mean anything. People hesitate. People choose words badly. It didn't automatically mean there was something going on behind my back. It definitely didn't mean I was already being replaced. I repeated that part in my head more than anything else. A few days later, she came over. That alone felt unusual. Recently, I had been the one making all the effort, going to her, adjusting to her time, fitting into whatever space she left open. So when she texted that she could come by, it felt like something shifting back. Like maybe I hadn't already lost her. I didn't overdo it, but I cleaned more than usual. Straightened things, wiped surfaces, changed the sheets. Small things that didn't matter on their own but felt important together. When she arrived, she smiled. A real smile. Hey, she said. Hey. We hugged, and for a moment it felt normal. Familiar. Easy. And that was the problem, because it reminded me how effortless things used to be. The evening went smoothly. We ordered food, argued lightly about what to watch, settled on something neither of us cared about. She laughed a few times, and it wasn't forced. At one point, she leaned her head on my shoulder. That almost broke something in me. It was such a small gesture, but it felt like proof that everything was still there. Like the distance, the silence, The strange feeling I couldn't explain. Maybe all of that had been in my head. I didn't bring anything up. I didn't want to risk losing this version of her. Later, she fell asleep quickly. That wasn't like her. She used to stay awake longer, even when she was tired. Talking, asking random questions, stretching the night out like she didn't want it to end. Now she was asleep within minutes. I stayed awake. Something still felt off. Not obvious. Not something I could clearly point to. Just wrong. Her phone was on the nightstand. The screen lit up suddenly. I didn't mean to look, but I did. I didn't see the full message. Just a name. One I didn't recognize. That shouldn't matter. People have contacts I don't know. Still, it stuck with me. It was late. Too late for something casual, at least the way things used to be between us. I looked away quickly. My chest felt tight. I turned onto my side, facing away. I didn't touch her phone. I didn't check. I didn't want to become that person, the one who searches for proof because he's too afraid to ask for truth. But I didn't sleep. The moment stayed with me. Small, quiet, but heavy. In the morning, she got up carefully. Or maybe she thought she did. I was already awake. I kept my eyes closed and listened. The soft movement of clothes. Quiet steps. A pause near the nightstand. A few seconds. Then the faint sound of a notification being opened. That detail stayed with me more than anything else. When she kissed me goodbye, it felt automatic. I have to go, she said. Okay. She smiled slightly, grabbed her things, and left. Before she walked out, she checked her phone again. After she left, the apartment felt different. Not just empty. Changed. Like something had shifted without me being part of it. I walked through the same space we had shared just hours before, trying to understand why everything felt unfamiliar. Nothing had moved, but something had. Later that day, I couldn't focus. My mind kept returning to that name. Not the name itself, but what it meant. Something outside of me. Something I wasn't part of. So I checked her social media. Everything looked normal at first. Posts. Stories. Nothing strange. Then I saw it. A like. On one of her photos. The name was familiar. I recognized it immediately. It was him. The guy from the coffee shop. Same name. Same face. That pause from before didn't feel random anymore. It still wasn't proof. But it wasn't nothing. And for the first time, I stopped convincing myself that everything was fine. I tried to convince myself it wasn't real. For a while, I clung to that hope. Maybe I was misreading things. Maybe I was imagining the signs. Maybe I was too sensitive, too paranoid, too insecure. That had to be it, right? Except deep down I knew. The small gestures, the pauses, the late-night messages, the subtle changes in tone, all of it added up. It wasn't about one moment or one interaction. It was the accumulation, the pattern I couldn't ignore anymore. A week later, we met again. I suggested coffee, something casual. Neutral territory. I needed to see her without the distractions of home or routine. She smiled when she arrived. Warm. Familiar. But her eyes were different, guarded. Careful. Calculated. Like she had rehearsed how to be normal around me, while keeping the truth tucked away somewhere I couldn't reach. I noticed it immediately, and it hurt in a way I wasn't expecting. We sat across from each other, small talk filling the space between us. I tried to focus on her words, on the subtle inflections, trying to catch glimpses of the old her, the one who was spontaneous, vibrant, alive with curiosity. She laughed once. That sound used to make my chest ache in a good way. This time, it was polite, reserved, lacking the depth it once had. After coffee, we walked a little. The city was alive around us, people moving in all directions, oblivious. I envied them. Oblivion must feel good. I finally asked the question I'd been avoiding for weeks, wrapped in as much casualness as I could muster. So how are we, really? She stopped walking for a second, a flicker of discomfort passing over her face. Then she exhaled. We're fine, she said. Are we? I pressed. She smiled weakly. We're okay. Isn't that enough? I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to shake her and demand the truth. But I didn't. I swallowed my frustration and nodded. Inside, I felt every inch of my hope crumbling. That night, I went home alone. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. I sat on the couch, staring at the floor. I didn't check her phone. I didn't scroll social media. I didn't reach out. I just let myself sit in it. The weight. The emptiness. The realization that maybe I had already lost her months ago, and I had been too blind, or too afraid, to admit it. Memories kept coming back. Small moments that had once seemed ordinary. The way she smiled in the morning light, the sound of her laughter in the kitchen, her hand brushing mine when she leaned close. Now they were ghosts, reminders of something I couldn't reach anymore. A few days later, I ran into a mutual friend. They mentioned seeing her recently, laughing with someone. Just a small interaction, nothing more than that. But it felt like a blow. I pretended I didn't care. I nodded, smiled, and walked away. And yet, on the subway ride home, I felt that strange tightening in my chest. The realization was unavoidable. She was moving on, in her way, at her pace. And I was still trying to decipher the fragments of a relationship that had quietly ended. That night, I dreamed of her. Not vividly, not in color, just flashes. Her face, her voice, moments I wanted back. I woke up feeling hollow, like I had been holding my breath for too long and finally exhaled. And for the first time, I allowed myself to admit it. I was done pretending. I had to accept the truth, even if it hurt. But acceptance didn't come with peace. Just clarity. And clarity is a sharp thing. I wish I could say I handled it well after that. That I confronted her calmly, asked direct questions, gave her space to be honest. But that's not what happened. What actually happened was quieter, slower, and honestly more pathetic than I'd like to admit. I started watching. Not in an obvious way. I didn't go through her phone, didn't ask her friends, didn't show up unannounced anywhere. On the surface, I acted exactly the same. But inside, something had shifted. I began paying attention to details I used to ignore. It started with her responses. Before, I never questioned them. If she said she was busy, she was busy. If she said she'd call later, she would. There was trust there, solid and uncomplicated. Now I noticed timing. How long it took her to reply. What time of day she was more active. When she suddenly disappeared mid-conversation. I told myself it was just awareness. But it wasn't. It was the beginning of doubt turning into habit. One evening, I texted her around 7. Nothing serious. Just something simple about my day. She didn't reply. At first, I didn't think much of it. An hour passed. Then 2. By 10, I checked her social media. She was active. Not just active, posting. A short video. Some background music. Nothing meaningful. But she had time for that. Just not for me. I stared at my phone longer than I should have. Then, at 10:47, she finally replied. Sorry, long day. Just saw this. I looked at the message. Then back at her story. Then at the message again. I didn't call her out. I just replied, no worries. That's the kind of person I had become. Another time, we had plans. Nothing big. Just dinner. She canceled an hour before. Something came up. Can we reschedule? I said yes, of course. I always said yes. Later that night, I opened her profile again. I don't even know why at that point. It had already become automatic. There was no post this time. But there was a new follower. Him. And she was following him too. I felt something drop inside me. Not break. Just sink. I still didn't confront her. Instead, I tried something else. I gave her space. Less texts. Fewer plans. I stopped being the one who always reached out first. Part of me thought maybe I was overwhelming her. Maybe if I pulled back, she'd lean in again. For a few days, it almost worked. She texted first. Asked how I was. Even suggested we meet. And I hate how much that meant to me. We met at a small place near her office. Casual. Neutral. She looked good. Relaxed. Comfortable in a way I hadn't seen in a while. We talked. Ate. Even laughed a bit. And for a moment, I forgot everything. Until her phone lit up. She glanced at it quickly. Just a second. But I saw the shift. It was small. A different kind of attention. Not stress. Not annoyance. Something lighter. She locked the screen immediately. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah, she said. Too fast. The conversation didn't recover after that. It wasn't obvious. We kept talking. But something underneath had changed. Or maybe I just couldn't ignore it anymore. When we left, we stood outside for a moment. That same kind of pause as before. I'll text you, she said. Yeah, I answered. No kiss. Not even an attempt. She just gave me a small smile and walked away. This time, I didn't stand there watching her. I turned and walked in the opposite direction. But the feeling followed me. Heavy, clear, unavoidable now. That night, I didn't check her social media. I didn't text. I didn't do anything. I just sat in my apartment and finally allowed the thought to fully form. Not halfway, not softened, not explained away, just the truth as it felt. She wasn't drifting. She wasn't confused. She wasn't overwhelmed. She was choosing something else. And I was still standing in the place where things used to be, pretending it hadn't already ended. The next few days were a haze. I kept myself busy, but everything reminded me of her. The smallest things, her favorite coffee mug sitting on my counter, the playlist we used to share, even the scent of rain on the streets outside, brought her back, uninvited and relentless. I told myself I needed distance, space to think, space to breathe, but every attempt felt futile. It was like she had imprinted herself into every corner of my life. I didn't reach out. I couldn't. Not anymore. But I watched. Quietly. One evening, I saw her walking with him. Not up close. From a distance, through the glass of a cafe we used to go to. But it was enough. They laughed, leaned close to each other, shared that kind of easy intimacy I used to take for granted. A wave of nausea hit me. My stomach tightened. My chest ached. And yet, I couldn't look away. I wanted to turn, to leave, to erase the image from my mind. But I stayed frozen, watching, as if seeing it would make the illusion end faster. It did. I walked home that night in silence. The city felt cold. The streets empty. Every neon light and passing car seemed distant, like I was watching everything from behind glass. I replayed every conversation we had in the past weeks. Every laugh that wasn't really a laugh. Every touch that felt like it wasn't fully there. I realized that I hadn't been imagining things. She had changed. Or maybe I had changed. Or maybe we had both drifted apart in ways we hadn't admitted to ourselves. It didn't matter anymore. Back at my apartment, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the ceiling. Tried to make sense of it all. Tried to reconcile the woman I loved with the woman I was watching from a distance now. And the truth hit me like a punch. She didn't need me the way she used to. She wasn't lost, confused, or overwhelmed. She was moving forward. With someone else. Or at least, she was choosing something else while I stayed frozen, hoping things would return to the way they were. I thought about confronting her, asking her directly, demanding honesty, but I realized it would change nothing. Whatever conversation we could have wouldn't bring back the moments. It wouldn't make her eyes light up the way they used to. It wouldn't make her smile meant for me again. Some things, I finally understood, can't be fixed. I started removing her from the small spaces of my life. Photos tucked away. Messages left unread. Songs skipped on the playlist we shared. It was painful. Slowly, like a tooth being pulled without anesthesia. But each step, each small act of letting go, felt like a tiny reclamation of myself. By the end of the week, I could breathe a little easier. Not because I had forgotten her. I never could. Not because I didn't hurt. The ache remained, a dull hum beneath everything I did. But because I finally acknowledged the truth. She was gone. And it wasn't anyone's fault. It was just life moving forward while I had clung too long. The days that followed were quiet. Not peaceful. Not freeing. Just quiet. I went through the motions of life. Work, errands, occasional outings with friends. But there was an invisible weight I carried. Every laugh, every casual conversation, felt muted because a part of me was still somewhere else, replaying memories I couldn't reclaim. I realized something important. The real heartbreak wasn't losing her to someone else. It was losing the version of her that existed only for me. The one who used to look at me like I was the center of her world. The one who would stay awake just to talk. The one who made mundane moments feel extraordinary. That version was gone. I tried to accept it. I told myself that love doesn't always last. That sometimes people drift apart, and it doesn't have to be dramatic. That sometimes life just moves faster than we can keep up with. I even began dating small distractions, not seriously. Coffee with someone new. A movie with a friend. Texts with someone whose name I didn't know very well. All attempts to fill the space she left behind. But nothing worked. The ache remained. One night, I went back to the cafe we used to visit. It wasn't to see her. I didn't want to. I just needed to be somewhere we had shared, somewhere that reminded me of the good times without forcing me to confront the bad ones. I ordered the same drink she used to love, the one she'd always get extra cream in, the one I sometimes teased her about. I sat alone, staring at the street through the rain-streaked window, listening to the murmur of conversations around me, all of them oblivious to the storm in my chest. And I cried, quietly, without shame, for everything we had, for everything we lost, for the person I thought I'd spend my life with. The next morning, I woke up feeling hollow but lighter. I still missed her. I still thought about her constantly. But for the first time, I wasn't trying to control the story, to rewrite the ending in my mind. I started removing her from my routines, one small step at a time. The coffee mug went back in the cabinet. Her playlist stopped playing. The small rituals that tied me to her faded into memory. And in their place, there was space. Weeks later, I received a message. From her. Nothing dramatic. Just a simple check-in. Hey, how are you? I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to reply. To say, I miss you, everything's changed, can we talk? But I didn't. I put the phone down. I realized that the past didn't need to be discussed. That we both had moved on in our own ways. That trying to hold on to what was already gone would only keep me trapped. I didn't delete the message. I didn't ignore it. I just let it be there. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. Not because I was happy, not because the pain was gone, but because I had finally let go. I had shown up too late for something that had already ended. And now, for the first time, I could start moving forward without her shadow holding me back.